Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe columnist, who joins us now. Dan, summarize your column, if you can, for our viewers and listeners.
Well, Dan, so the point of contention, we believe, between Belichick and Brady is the trainer, Alex Guerrero, who was around in a big way for years on the sideline, team plane, team hotel, office at Gillette. And Bill basically banished him from the premises last year, where he can treat Tom and Tom only on the premises and no longer travels with the team. He's on his own, basically, and Tom still believes in him. The guy's been great for Tom. And but a lot of other players are gravitating toward the Alex Guerrero method. And Guerrero has a very shady track record, you know, all kinds of being sanctioned by the feds and lying about being a doctor and his degrees and whatnot. So you've got that situation which has created tension with Brady and Belichick, the reason probably why Brady's not at the OTAs for the first time this week and not with his teammates. And so you have that, and there's been some push, well, why doesn't Bill just yield and let Guerrero be around? And then on the next day, Julian Edelman, Brady's favorite guy, favorite receiver, he gets popped for 4 games. Allegedly, it's being contested. And he's another client of Guerrero. Now, that doesn't mean that there's anything Guerrero did to supply. We don't know that. But it's just a bad optic that as this thing is coming to a head, that a Guerrero guy gets popped for PEDs.
There's a part of your column that says the following. Let's revisit for a moment exactly who Guerrero is. He is a guy who said he was a doctor, even though he was not a doctor. He marketed a beverage of organic greens that falsely claimed could prevent or cure cancer, heart disease, arthritis, and diabetes, and lied about receiving a bachelor's degree in biology. Has Tom Brady been asked about all of these things? Like, why does he believe in him if these things are made up?
I think Tom has written it off as youthful indiscretions on the part of Alex Guerrero. Tom is very tied into this individual. Tom's son is the godson of Alex Guerrero. If you look at all the Instagram pictures from last week when Tom was in Monaco at the Grand Prix and throwing passes off the yachts, you know, Guerrero's there. They're very much tied at the hip, and it's worked for Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, so in his mind, this is the way to go. You can play till you're 100, and you can make yourself impervious from all injury and concussion and everything else. You can become more peakable. And increasingly, like Gronkowski's over there, and Edelman was over there. So, but also guys like Hightower and Edelman are Guerrero guys. They were both out for the year last year with injuries.
You also point out that, you know, given his snake oil background, why should we believe in that he had nothing to do with, this Julian Edelman situation here?
Well, someone who's had the track record of Alex Guerrero certainly it's not unreasonable to question when this thing comes up. I mean, it's like, if you're going to sell concussion juice and Supreme Greens to cure cancer and been shut down by the feds twice, what would prevent you from doing this? And this is not we don't know, but it's just, again, it fortifies Belichick's case for not having him around.
As far as Edelman sitting out for 4 games, coming back from an injury, not the first guy who, if this is the case, that you're coming back from an injury and you use PEDs to come back. But at his age, it's kind of a tricky age, I would think. Or is he different than Wes Welker at 32?
Well, I think what you say is true, Dan. I mean, if you go back, Ninkovich got popped and he was never the same again in that age area. Rodney Harrison, who gave him a couple of great years here, was never the same, being caught at that age. Go back to Sean Merriman, who was younger, but he was a great player, and it was never the same. So I don't know whether it's like you can't be as loose with the pharmaceuticals once you've been caught, or that you're in your early 30s and you're just trying to hang on and stay as great as you were and getting some help. I mean, you and I are adults. We probably think everybody in the NFL has gone something. How else could you play the game?
Yes.
I mean, it's so barbaric. It's like it's not a surprise. And the league doesn't really, I don't want to say doesn't care about it, but they don't police this, vigilantly. And I think there's a lot of looking the other way because it's just kind of assumed that everybody needs a little something.
As soon as we heard the news about Edelman, we came in this morning and we all were looking back on an interview that he did when he was putting out that book, the children's book, and he came in the studio and he talked about work ethic and his dad and making him proud. And I don't know, maybe I'm being naive here, but it felt like, boy, this would, if something like that happened, it would really crush his dad. Does it fit in with the character here, or have you even looked at that with Edelman? That is he that kind of guy who needs to get that edge, or he wouldn't be in this position without something like this?
Everybody loves the guy. He's a little guy. He was drafted as a quarterback. I mean, Belichick kind of made him, by taking a quarterback and, changing his position and really making him just a great weapon here. And he's worked great with Brady. And he was way down the depth chart in the early years. So, with people like Welker leaving, and he was able to elevate. And that catch he made against the Falcons really won the Super Bowl, any way you want to look at it. I mean, it did. And so he's a much beloved local guy, and no one takes any joy in seeing this sort of thing come out. But in that sport, again, Rodney Harrison, perfect example. His reputation is almost flawless. Nobody cares that happened years ago. I mean, he's just a stand-up guy and a man's man, and is not punished for it. And I don't think Edelman will be either.
As far as depth goes at wide receiver, they brought in another, cast of characters here. So how would you handicap what they have? Because, you lose Cooks and you're losing Danny Amendola, and now you got Edelman down for 4 games.
Right. It might not be the worst thing, given that, he's not going to have to rush back and have 4 more games, and coming off this injury, the pacing is probably not the worst thing for him. As for Brady, he's running out of targets with Amendola gone, him still gone for 4 games. We know Gronk's going to be there. They've got some young people there, and Tom wasn't at the OTAs with them, unfortunately. But Dan, you and I both know that when we're talking in January, they will be on their way to the AFC Championship. I mean, it's not like the Dolphins, the Jets, or the Bills are going to challenge them. They're going to get where they want to go. It's just a matter of can they execute in the big games at the end.
All right, one final question. It has nothing to do with PEDs, Edelman, or any of that stuff, but it has to do with Boston sports. I got into this discussion with my guys earlier in the week because Mookie Betts is a guy that I would pay to see. I think that he's sort of the East Coast version of Mike Trout. If I said you could have Bryce Harper or Mookie Betts to start your team.
Oh, boy. That's a tough one. You really got me on the spot there. It sounds a little crazy, but I might go with Betts. We just don't know where the ceiling is with this guy. And, he was an infielder just 4 years ago and has had a good track record with injuries. So I'm just you can't go wrong either way. Crazy, but I'll say Betts.
All right. Yeah, maybe I'm waiting for more from Harper. I think Betts is more consistent. Sort of like Trout is. You get to the point where you sort of expect Mookie Betts to be great every day. It feels like Harper has those moments where he has a greater moment. He just doesn't. He's not as consistently great as the other two, in my opinion. So, I mean, you can't go wrong, but I would go with Betts, even though if I'm selling the flamboyancy in the face of a franchise, then it might be Bryce Harper. But Mookie Betts, he's in the conversation. Let's put it that way.
No question. And it's all ahead for him, and the ceiling's unlimited.
Great stuff, Dan. Have a good weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Dan Shaughnessy, Boston Globe. Stirring it up a little bit.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.